It's pointless having a plan incorporated into a leaflet that's going to last for about 3 years without this information on it. It is a proposed car park, and I think if people understand it as that, then it's going to be right. It's pointless as producing a leaflet now that's going to be out of date in about another 12 months.
Provided it's on as proposed, but you're going to take the stick of people coming up, possibly, and saying to you, where's this car park, why is it on there, why can't I go and use it? So you've got the play area on here. You know, it won't be built until the end of the summer.
Well, you know how I work. If I put it on there, it's going to be done, isn't it?
So you think, yes.
Well,
yeah.
hopefully. I mean, this is certainly going to be done in next, what, 4 or 5 months anyway.
It'll be done as soon as we can do it.
Oh, we don't need planning permission for that children's play area.
No, we don't.
Well,
we do for the car parks.
Well, it's one way I G'd up, I see it's got. If I can put that in now,
yeah.
It's going to get the book moving, isn't it?
Eric Staniforth, the Chief Warden, and David Richards, the landscape architect, maintain an argumentative, though amicable, partnership in the making of Greater Manchester's Pennington Flash Country Park at Lee. The park, developed from the dereliction of the old Lancashire coalfield, is surrounded by reminders of the industrial past. Pit heaps, cotton mills and streets of mean old terraces are broken by the occasional rush of newer housing estates. And Ron Freethy has brought me to Pennington Flash to hear the story of its transformation and to see its natural history in the depth of winter.
You know, Ron, even its most dedicated admirers wouldn't describe this landscape as anything other, I think, than pretty appalling. Why search for natural history here?
Well, this is where it starts. You know, if nature can claw this back, it can claw anything back. And if man will just help it a little bit, it can be really quite marvellous. Do you know something? I bet you there's more wildlife within a 10-mile radius of Lee and Wigan than there is in parts of the Lake District. This is where it starts.
Yeah.
If it can survive here, it can survive anywhere. Down there you've got lichen, right?
Yes.
Now that's the start of a woodland. Now then, see, you've got there a plant, or a combination of plants. It's partly a fungus,
yes,
and that grabs hold of the spoil heap, right, and stabilises it,
yeah,
so that it holds the land tight, but it can't make food. But your green plant, your little alga, that can. So what you've got is something that can really build up the soil, and
yeah,
from that, 30 years' time, you get a woodland.
There's not much evidence of it here, Ron.
Well, a wood is a lot of trees.
Yeah.
So you've got to start with one tree. Now, we do better than that. Over there, we got 2. So you've got 2 trees.
Two miserable willows.
Well, you've a head start, and I'll tell you what, it will be a woodland in 30 years.
I'd like to see some proof.
Well, I can prove that to you now.
All right. Prove your point, having dragged me to the top of this hill in, where is it, Aspel?
Aspel, yeah, well, I'll tell you, it's easy enough to prove my point. If you look at this woodland here, that's the same thing that we had down there, except we're about 10 years on.
But evidently, this is a slag heap, Ron.
Yeah, it's a slippery slag heap at the moment, isn't
I
it?
thought they were infertile.
It depends. They're infertile when you start, but if you give them a little bit of help,
yeah,
and that's what's happened here. I mean, nature's claimed part of it back. See the alder tree over there?
Yes.
Well, I mean, that's, in all probability, bird planted. So you've got your alder trees, which dominate part of this. I mean, they're all over the place. Can you see the catkins on it? You see, you've got the male ones, which are the long purple ones, and then you've got the female ones that are black. And they're full of food.
Yeah.
So you've got things like finches coming in and feeding on that. And then if you give it just a little bit of help, you see the tree here?
That's a
Well,
beech,
I mean,
by
that's
the
a
look of it.
beech. And what they've done, I'm sure they've planted an awful lot of beech.
Yes.
And that sort of brings back, when the leaves decay, that brings back the fertility to the soil. Now, when I look at beech and when I look at the big conifer, see the big conifer over there?
Indeed,
That
yes.
tells me straight away that man's giving nature a hand. There's always a problem, you see, with mining. You've got big heaps at one end and you've
Yeah.
got subsidence at the other.
Ah, yes.
Now, your problem with subsidence is that, obviously, you're going to get water collected in it. And that's where you get the situation at Pennington. So you've got one extreme here, a big heap of what was infertile mess,
yeah,
and you plant trees on it. The other extreme is you've got a big dip that fills with water. So either way, you're a winner.
I went on my holidays 1 week and I came back and there's an area, it's actually on this map, I don't know whether you can see, it's a little area there that originally I had it fenced off as a nature reserve area. An area where there were rough grass, and it was a place where mallard duck came in winter time to shelter, and also it was a very valuable breeding area or nesting area. Comes along after my holidays to find a contractor planting it all up with little trees. And our friend David here had put this contract out without even telling me.
That's not strictly true.
That is strictly true. Now, the thing about it was that David, okay, I see his point of view. He put them trees in there so that when it grows, it'll be a shelter from the Lee bypass. But
which is fully justified now,
which is fully justified.
Embankment in
That's fair enough. But you've also done a lot of little birds out of a very valuable breeding area.
You can see what the problem is here. You see, we're on the original height of the land, and they've had to build this canal up in order to stop it collapsing.
Yeah.
If you look down there to your right, I mean, there is subsidence gone mad.
So if this was the original level,
Yeah.
this canal, all that has actually subsided.
That's right, it's all gone down. In that dip, you've got what amounts to a shallow lake, which is obviously really rich in food. So it's really a wildfowl refuge in winter, and it's got lots of space for birds in summer as well. It's marvellous, really.
It's quite evident from picnic sites and things that this is also managed.
It is, it's managed actually very well here, I think. I mean, really, if you want to talk about management, the main man, of course, is your warden. And he's a great bloke because Eric Staniforth was a miner for 8 years, so he mowed underneath, and now he's sort of helping manage the dip.
All right, Pat, that's what I wanted to do, don't that? Just fill this belly in here, grade it back, front road, straight back up to the top, nice bank on it. When they're back filling that there, don't forget to leave that ditch up alongside that fence up there, okay? And then go back down to this side of the bridge and just make a mound upon this side of the bridge. That just wants about a foot, raising about a foot. Is that all right? Okay, Cop. I arrived here in May 1980, nearly 5 years. I came here, I was a project ranger in Bolin Valley in Cheshire, and 5 years ago I landed on the shores of Pennington Flash, and I'll be quite honest with you, I was absolutely dismayed at what I saw. That particular time the tip was an ongoing thing. There was rubbish everywhere, blowing everywhere. People were shooting the ducks, what few there were. Motorcycles tearing up and down the place. But after a week, just walking around, I realised the potential of the place. The lake is absolutely fantastic. If it was surrounded by wooded acres, you'd have thought it were in Switzerland. But here we are in Lee, and I very much had to look to the future and realise the potential. The wildlife, plenty of wildlife, as much wildlife I'd ever seen when I was a project ranger in the Bolin Valley. And it really took off from there. The interest was there, the setting was there, it just wanted somebody to love it a little bit and develop it. A lot of people think that this is a natural lake, but it isn't so. 100 years ago, this was actually farmland, with a brook running through it, Haybrook. And there's actually a farm in the middle of the Flash itself called Runston in the Meadows. In actual fact, there's 14 seams of coal being mined at Bickershaw Colliery, all at different levels. And there's actually 11 seams being taken from underneath the Flash area itself. Now, if you can imagine a seam of coal like a layer of cream in a cake, in this case, you'd have 11 different layers of cream. And you can understand that if you scoop that cream out, the whole cake will collapse. And that's the case at Pennington. I was actually a chief with no Indians. I had nobody to work for me. And when I arrived here, it was just a case of taking up the job of chief warden. One of the things at that particular time, I didn't have an office. I had no machinery, no tools. So it was very much a case of getting established and getting something moving. Like any other thing, when you've got a derelict area like this, if you are seen to be doing work, then other people started getting involved with you. In this case, the architect at GMC started visiting the site, got us interested in it as I were, and we kicked off from there on. I have great admiration for Dave. He's a brilliant lad, there's no doubt about that, as an architect. What Dave doesn't realise is the practicalities of many jobs and the needs for people. He can see them in an academic sort of a way. I am actually the man on the ground. I get direct feedback from the public, and this is where the controversy comes in. I mean, you know the Flash, we're trying very, very hard to create areas for nesting birds. Because the population's being built up, we've got to increase the areas. Now, the birds that's using that, which are ground nesting birds, in another 5 years it's going to be a young wood, that.
Yes, but in that 5 years we will have established new bird breeding areas.
We can't, we can only go so
Two
far.
go side by
We
side,
can
don't
only,
they?
you can only go so far.
You can, but you can't establish a
I mean,
woodland in a year. You need 5 years to do it.
Yes, I know, but
What we've basically got here is a lot of rubbish, which we've covered with a very thin layer of inert material, subsoil. We're
Yeah.
now trying to establish trees on that. It's a very exposed site. It's got problems of heat coming off the refuse. And you've got to pick the trees to grow on the site. And that's quite difficult. So we plant a lot of what we call nurse species, which help the eventual vegetation to establish on the site.
So what you're doing really, I mean, if this was left to nature, 100 years from now you'd have a wood. And all you're doing is short-circuiting that and
Yes.
making it happen rather quicker.
Yes,
But,
we're speeding the whole process up. We pick plants which will attract a whole range of species, so we get a complete ecosystem on the site. You've got to have the insects for the birds to live off. To encourage the birds to come, you've got to have berries on the plants to, again, attract the birds.
And what about the wetland over there? How did you sort of tackle that?
Well, the wetland was a different proposition altogether. We managed to save that from being tipped. The original intention was to tip right over it. And we put in a sort of a bank of material around the outside of it, cut a deep channel around it to keep people out. And it's been a major influence on the design of the whole site round about.
In 30 years, if I came back here, what would you expect me to see?
I think you'd see a big transformation. I think you'd see a lot of woodland areas, a lot of enclosed meadowlands. It certainly wouldn't be as windy as it is today. And hopefully on the water areas you'd see just as many, if not a lot more species than you can see at present, because it would then have had 30 years of positive wildlife management.
vandalism in this park is the lowest in any country park in the north of England, I would imagine. And the reason for this is, in the first instance, I got the Naughty Boys Elite to help me make things, and secondly, I had manpower service teams, and all the young lads from the area at one time, and I think I've had 25 altogether, have actually helped me to make this park. They've helped me to erect fencing, they've planted trees, they've really got stuck in. And if you can involve the local people, then they're not going to vandalise it. And I would like to think that's one of the reasons why they leave the place alone. This is Eric's mound. I built this myself, or I made it myself anyway, with a D4 dozer. And actually took me about 5 days shaping it. One of the reasons I made it was because I wanted some part of me to be part of this park, something that I could refer to. Hopefully when I'm dead and gone, this mound will still be here, it'll be here forever. And I would like to think that when people do stand on it, maybe they'll remember Eric and remember me, because this is one of the best viewpoints on the park. If you look out of the Flash, it's an absolutely superb view. I suppose this is my favourite point in Hope Park, as far as the view's concerned anyway. From this particular point you can see the entire length of the lake, who believe it's 1,500 metres in length, a mile in length. There's 170 acre of water there. And from this point you can see the yacht clubs and the wetland area that we've created, and that's for the wading birds, the little birds with a long beak. And with this in mind, in that clump of bushes in the bottom there, I'm going to build a bird hide. It'll be 15 foot off the floor, so that you can look down over that wetland area and look out across the Flash. It's a super place as well for looking at the colliery that's spoilt it, because look at that mound across there, 61 acre of colliery spoiled. Can you imagine, in another 3 or 4 years' time, we're going to start work very soon, we're going to landscape it all, cover it with grass and trees, and there'll be that colliery headgear at the back of it, very much part and parcel of Pennington Flash. If it wasn't for that colliery, there wouldn't even be a lake here. When you look further on in the distance there, you can see Winter Hill, all the way up to Rivington. You can see all of Lee. And one thing I'm very grateful to Dave for is that when we've been planting these trees, it's taken the view very much into consideration, because all this planting in front of us, it won't get very tall, it's mainly shrubs, so that the view at all times will be unimpeded. On top of mound here, hopefully we're going to have a stone plinth with a brass inset on the top of it. And what we intend to do is to have a map of the whole park, so that visitors, strangers to the place, will be able to come and stand on this spot, look at the map and identify all the different areas around. There were no reason to plant it up with trees as intensively as you did do. I mean, you planted trees 6 foot apart all over.
No, I don't take that criticism at all.
Well, it is.
The areas which were reed beds are still reed beds.
Yeah, you've left a little bit on shore, but I mean...
There's a margin there.
Yeah, but ducks, you know, they can walk and they can fly. I mean, they use a much bigger area than that. You've just left a little piece on shore at lake. And I would imagine there's about 2 acres of land there, with trees planted up every 6 foot.
Yes, but it is immediately adjacent to the flyover on the Lee bypass, which will have juggernauts zooming along it, lights along the side of the pavement, and it will not be a preserve area.
That's
on that
fair enough. If I'm to take what people tell me, that the best sanctuaries for wild birds and creatures is on side of flipping motorways.
Oh, no.
It is. You know, there's somebody else that turn around and say...
Can I remind you that at the time I put trees in there, you had just made a picnic area at the side of it,
yes,
and you were proposing to put a children's play facility in the middle of it.
David, can I ask you a question? 5 years ago, you could count the number of people that came down on one hand. Now, because the place is developing, because there's interest being created, then we've got people coming down, schools coming down, and people who's never been down before are now coming down readily to Pennington. So one of the prime things that I had to do was to create nature reserve areas that people couldn't get to, and we achieved this by digging wide flooded ditches. The beauty about these is you can't see them. They are an added form of habitat for the birds, and they prevent the small boys from wading across. They are quite deep. We are now getting duck breeding that haven't bred for many, many years. Breeds like tufted, ruddy duck, widgeon, gadwall. We are getting 1 or 2 of these, but it's the mallard that's really taken off. 5 years ago, I think there were a reported 8 pair. This year, we've lost count. And as you can see on the ice today, there's upwards of 300 birds. 3 days ago, there were 800 mallard at Pennington. How the ornithologists count them is beyond me, but I take the word for it.
Hiya, Dave. Anything
All right.
much out there? It's a bit drafty, isn't it?
It is. I'm just waiting for to see what comes with the gulls tonight. They're just starting to build up now, ready for the roost.
Quite a few waterfowl. I used to come here specifically at one time just to watch dabchick. I assume you've still got numbers.
We've
out
got
there.
dabchick, yeah, there are 30 odd at present, but they are difficult bird to census, dabchick. The great crested is straightforward.
Yeah.
And the ice sent all the great crested off, probably to the coast. And no doubt they'll be back in a day or two. They come back pretty quickly when they thaw.
See, just over there seems to be one. Just put your glasses on. You got it? In among the mallard?
Oh yeah, there's one there on.
So that's one back, isn't it?
Yeah. On a normal winter day, you can certainly mallard and teal are the most numerous. And then there are widgeon, pintail and shovel about at present. Pots have declined in recent years. We used to get 300 or 400 in winter. We're now down to 50s and 60s. They've gone elsewhere. Tufted duck are pretty numerous.
Yeah, we've had potted and tufted duck. Just as I was coming over the top, I saw them in a flock.
Yeah.
Tell you what seems to me the dominant bird here today, at least, and that's coot. And what about the numbers of coot?
Well, we have about 900 coot at present. The build-up really began in mid-June, with molting birds arriving, and we'd got up to 500 by September, 800 by October, and then a decrease, and now with the cold weather there's been a new influx, and we're pushing 1,000 probably today, Rob.
How long have you been watching this water now?
I've been coming here about 20 years, fairly regularly.
Really, for a winter bird watcher, this is a good watch. And
For a winter bird watcher, well, throughout the year, Pennington is superb. A young friend of mine is doing a count this year on the number of species he can see in a year. And he reached 50 at about 9:45 on New Year's Day morning. And hopefully he thinks that, and I think that by mid-April he'll be up to 100.
Yeah.
And the target is about 150 species by the end of the year, which really is quite a cheap, you know.
Well, to me, I mean, when I first started coming to watch Pennington, before you had all the sort of organisation and things, you wouldn't expect that number, would you?
If you examine old bird reports, Ron, and you see that the first 6 bitterns that came to Pennington were shot, and the Great Northern Diver was shot, and the Leach's Petrel was shot.
Yeah.
I mean, I need to say no more, really. Nowadays, nothing gets shot.
I associated myself with the people that did shoot down here. I made friends with them, I talked to them, and I put the ultimatum to them that if anybody were going to shoot the duck, then I would be quite capable of shooting the ducks myself. I threatened to wipe out every duck that came down on Pennington Flash, so there'll be nothing for nobody. The lads have seen me shoot. They know I can handle a gun, and they know I mean what I say. And to this effect, they've left them alone.
Ron, you've proved your point that winter can provide plenty of natural history and plenty of enjoyment. But what conclusions have you drawn for yourself about Pennington Flash?
The one I've had for a long time, really, that if you look at a reservoir like this, a stretch of water like this, and you think, what can man do to it to improve it? Now here he's done just that. There's a lot of sort of wild areas that are half as rich as this. And what man's done is improve the thing and make a haven for wildlife.
So it's a perfect combination of man working hand in hand with nature.
Yeah, just sort of giving it a leg up, really, which it very often needs. I mean, when you think what we've done to it, and now what we've done to improve it, we've really given back an awful lot of what we've taken out of it.
10 minutes ago, there were a little duck stood not 10 yards off us. This is a sign at times. Creatures, provided they're left quietly, which that area was because it was fenced off, will breed, irrespective of people walking past, irrespective of buses. They will breed in that particular area. And you're changing the whole context of that little 2-acre paddock there, because, same as I say, in another 4 or 5 years, that's going to be a young wood.
I think, considering that at the same time period, another 30 or 40 acres of rough grassland have been created to compensate for that in much better areas.
Yeah, but
I think we've lost nothing on that.
Yeah, but you're talking about an area that were used by partridge, mallard and tufted. These rough areas we're creating on paddock there for wagtails and skylarks and stuff like that, a different kind of bird altogether.
I don't believe there's any less birds in that area now.
series continues at the same time next Wednesday.